Hey there, welcome to the James Show, News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. We're having a radio legend on the show next. No big deal for my next guest, Jerry Reynolds from the Car Pro Show. Welcome, Jerry. It's honored to have you back on the James Show.
Well, hello, buddy. It's great to be back with you today.
All right, so first questions first. You're my car guy. I'm in one of these storms like you see in Florida or North Carolina, or, we have floods around here sometimes. How high does the water have to get before my car could be ruined?
Typically, if it gets to the bottom of the door, there's risk. And that's because there's a lot of wiring that runs under a car that you never see. But it all has metal ends on them for connectors, and those things will rust out. And that's the fear of a flooded car, James. They can do a lot of things to mitigate the standout stuff, when a car gets wet, particularly on the inside of the car. But the stuff that really will cost you a lot of money and give you a lot of trouble happens down the road, and that's the problem.
I see. So, I had an older car. There was some flooding around White Rock Lake 20 years ago, and I was in a 73 Comet, the opposite of a Maverick.
Yeah.
And water got into it. Water was above the door. I was splashing water in the floorboard. It got so high that my engine turned off. I let it sit for a few days, and it turned back on, and it didn't have any problem. Did I just get lucky, or are old cars that different?
Well, I think there was a lot less on cars at that time. And, the more things you have on a car, that means more wiring, more sensors, and things that can go wrong. You got to be careful with brakes because those things will rust and cause you all kinds of problems. And if the water gets high enough to get into the engine, again, that's an area where long-term effects can be horrendous, and they may not show up in the short term. And that's why you really have to look hard. Last year alone in the United States, over 500,000 flooded cars that were deemed totals were resold in America. A lot of those are going to end up right here in Dallas-Fort Worth because it's a robust used car market. It always is. So a lot of those are going to be here. It may take a year for them to get here. The cars may have a clean title. The only real safe bet is to look at a history report. Those are not easily manipulated. So, you want to check. Usually there's an insurance claim that'll trigger Carfax or AutoCheck, which is my favorite personally. It'll trigger a report on there, and you've got to look. It's the best $20 you could spend.
All right, so if I'm going to go on a little 15-minute test drive of a car and it may have been flooded, what am I looking for? Am I looking for knocks, spurts, sparks, what?
Your nose is your best friend. Usually you can smell a mustiness in a car, even if they've done everything they can to clean it and shampoo the seats and shampoo the carpets, replace the carpets. There's still telltale signs. If you get in a car and shut the door and something doesn't smell right, that's a clue. As good a job as these rehabbers do with cars, they don't think of everything. Rust on bolts under the seats is a telltale sign. So if you just get under with a flashlight and look real quick, if those bolts are rusted, it's been in water. Under the floor in the trunk, there's a mat in just about every car today. And if you'll raise that up, that's a place they don't think to clean. You'll see remnants of dirt and mud and those sort of things, which is a big thing. But look for rust anywhere. That's always a good thing to do. Look under the brake and gas pedals. They never think to clean there.
Right.
But under the hood, any of the bolts and screws, if they're rusted, there's a good chance that car had water in it.
Jerry Reynolds, how long have you been doing the Car Pro Show?
23 years. 2 weeks ago, actually.
What'd you say your phone busted up for a second?
23 years. We had our anniversary about 3 weeks ago, I guess now. We've been there on WBAP that long.
Well, happy birthday. I think I remember when y'all started, because in that 73 Comet, all it had was an AM radio. So there was a lot of WBAP and the ticket in my rotation back then.
Yeah, thank goodness for 93.3, right?
Yeah, right. I'll be here for a little bit longer then, even if they get rid of AM. Jerry, tell them how they find you outside of the James Show.
Go to the carpro.com. I've got an article there I wrote about flooded cars and the dangers of them. If people want to look at that, there's a search box right up at the top. Just put flood in there. It'll pull the article right up. You can read a lot more than we had time to talk about here today, James.
Well, it's an honor having you on again, Jerry. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, buddy. You keep up the good work.
Jerry Reynolds, the Car Pro Show. 23 years old now. That's like older than all of my children. His show is so old, it can drink, but not drink and drive. See what they did there? All right, coming up next, there's a Kansas, calm down studio. There's a Kansas professor caught on video saying men who won't vote for women should be shot. Now, he says he was kidding, but I'll play you the audio. Does it sound like he was kidding? That's coming up next. If you got any comments, 800-288-9227. This is The James Show. I'm James Parker on News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Hey, welcome to The James Show, News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Quit trying to make power generation happen on your terms. And I'm not talking to you. I'm talking about the people who keep trying to use government to control how, where, when, and what source we get our electricity from. Will you stop it? What have you ever been correct about? So the latest thing that's got me a little worked up here, and if you have any opinions on this, I'd love to hear from you. And really, I'd like to hear someone tell me why I'm wrong on this one, because I don't think Texas should hook up to the national electricity grid. 800-288-9227. Call in, tell me how I'm dumb or I need to read more, do some research, or send me a link to a 2.5-hour video that I need to watch before I have an opinion on it. 800-288-9227. I got a bunch of those with the weather creation machines in the last couple of days. But the U.S. Department of Energy said it's going to put $360 million toward a project to create a new link between the Texas power grid and the other grids in the Southeast. No. Leave us alone. Why do they want to hook up to our grid so bad? Why can't we just have our own grid? I'm suspicious of this before you even know the details. Why? Why do you need to spend all this money? Well, and if you do, why does it have to be tax money? Why don't the private sector or quasi-private entities like Entergy and Cleco and all these other energy companies that are trying to get their hands on Texas, why don't you let them pay for it? Everything about this is suspicious. The one thing that they try and tell you is like, well, this will make the power be more reliable and you won't have to worry about outages as much. And you know how you have like blackouts and brownouts sometimes because your grid has failed? Well, this will make that not likely to happen. You know, there's places in America that have a far bigger problem with blackouts and brownouts than Texas. In fact, it's been my observation that the blackout/brownout leader of America is California. California. Aren't they connected to other grids? So you tell me if I hook up to these grids that I won't have as many blackouts and brownouts. But the blackout and brownout leader of the country is on this grid. So I don't buy it. I don't buy it for a second. And even if we are going to have problems separate from that, if you're not from Texas, why do you care? Just leave us the hell alone. Let us have blackouts and brownouts and be on our own thing. And another thing, from within Texas, how do we have this problem? I thought we were now the leading wind energy generation state. I mean, and we are. I think are we number one in solar power too, or is that like Nevada or something? But as far as renewables go, as far as green energy goes, we're one of the vanguards. We're one of the leaders. Oh, we're still having electricity issues? Huh. That's weird because you told us if we built all these windmills, we'd be more robust and everything would be awesome and there'd be unicorns and rainbows and cupcakes everywhere. 800-288-9227. 800-288-9227. Now, if I put on my cynical, within the context of history approach to it, my cynical hat, why do they want to hook us up to the grid? It's not so they can give us all kinds of free electricity, so they can take electricity from us. So there's a consolidation of power to where if they want to control the electricity of the entire United States, all they have to do is control one system, not a multiple patchwork, decentralized system. It's not going to make us more robust. It's a bad idea. I like the idea of being separate because if there is someone on the other side of the planet that wants to take down all of America and there's two grids and like, well, we're only going to take down one. Well, let's take down the bigger one. We'd be okay. This might save us from an attack instead of put us all together in the same attack. In fact, I think we should break up the national grid and we should have it regional. 800-288-9227. They're either going to take power from us or they're going to have an excuse to control how, when, and where we do things that we do. You lose autonomy. Right now, we have autonomy. We have our own grid. And because we have our own grid, we can make our own decisions and not be encumbered by the goobers around us. Do you want to be hooked up to California, the brownout leader of the nation? How does that make us more robust? It sounds like we're going to lose out of this deal. And if it's such a good idea, why do they have to spend $360 million studying it and convincing it and funding it? It would already be happening on its own if it was a great idea. Let's try this one. Hey, Gene in Willow Park. You're on WBAP with James Parker. What do you think?
Hey, James. Well, let me start with, I really like climate change. Happens 4 times a year. It comes and goes. That's the only climate change I believe in. But also, I tried to talk my father-in-law into putting up a windmill one time for totally, truly sustainable energy, because he had 20 acres out near Canton. He had 2 stock ponds with about a 40-foot head between the 2 of them. And what I wanted him to do was use the windmill to pump water from the bottom one to the top one and run a pipe with a hydroelectric coming down the hill from the other one.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you have your own little hydro station, huh?
So you would have a really nice, about an acre stock pond as a battery to run your hydroelectric. That's the only way that you can actually make the green stuff work, and they're not working on it that way. So.
Well, you've never heard me gripe about hydroelectric, but the Army Corps of Engineers and other people who know more about this seem to all agree that we're pretty much running out of convenient places to dam up and get hydroelectric power out of. But I like your little microcosm of a system. Gene, what do you think about the idea of hooking to the national grid?
Totally terrible. I mean, totally terrible. If you ask me, of course, you probably don't want to go into this subject, but if we close the border, I'd be okay with it. I could probably get my daughter, who lives in Oklahoma, a visa every now and again.
Right. I'm ready to just split off. We need to make the United States of Texas. We'll just rewrite the Constitution. We'll re-ratify it all over again. And half these states will join us. Oklahoma will jump in just a second. They'll follow us around like a dog. All right, thank you very much, Gene in Willow Park. 800-288-9227 if you want to be on the James Show. Coming up next, Cheryl Hines, you know her from Curb Your Enthusiasm and a bunch of other stuff. She is married to RFK, Robert F. Kennedy, but now she's not so enthusiastic about that marriage anymore. She wants a divorce because RFK's been supporting Trump. What? You are willing to end a marriage over a vote? We'll talk with Jennifer Hargrave from Hargrave Family Law about what's going on with that. 800-288-9227. I'm James Parker. This is The James Show, News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Hey, welcome to The James Show, News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. I am your host, James Parker. Has politics affected your relationships? Have you ever had a breakup or divorce over politics? 800-288-9227. I have one friend. I've heard from other people who have, but I have one friend who I would consider someone more than just an acquaintance that went through this. And they had been married for a while, and it was Donald Trump that broke her. He voted for Donald Trump in 2016, and she was so mad at him when she found out. And then it was the constant source of arguments and tension from 2016 through the next election cycle. And she was someone that believed all the stuff that she heard in the media. She's one of the people that thought he said, there's very fine people on both sides, or white supremacists and Nazis at Charlottesville are very fine people. She believed that. She believed all the other Russian collusion. She believed, I guess probably in the bloodbath comment from this year. But in 2020, she kind of put down her foot. She's like, you better not vote for him again or it's over. And he did. And they broke up. So this happened on a bigger scale with Cheryl Hines and RFK. By the way, RFK's mom passed away today, didn't she? That kind of a sad addition to the story. But Cheryl Hines and Robert F. Kennedy were happily married when they were both supporting Team Blue. But now that RFK has gone Team Red, Cheryl Hines is asking for a divorce. And is this really over politics. Tell me there has to be something going on. Tell me he left his wet towels on the floor. Or tell me he didn't remember her birthday, or it was more than just a vote. These people, if you break up with someone for the way that they vote, these are like filters that should have stopped you from marrying them in the first place, aren't they? Let's ask Jennifer Hargrave from Hargrave Family Law, since she's a family law attorney. Let me ask you, does that make too much sense? Like, if you don't like someone's politics, you should have found that out before you married them?
Well, I think that would be a good idea, certainly to have those conversations with the person that you're marrying. But as you've just seen here, politics change, values change, and parties change over time. So it's not at all unusual that people get married and think they're aligned on certain issues, and then over time, people's positions change, and that can, lead to discord in the marital relationship.
Wow, but I can also think of examples of people who are on opposite political parties who are married, and it seems to be happily so. Is there something? What makes it different from a couple that's happily married on both sides of the political aisle to a couple that's not?
I mean, the truth is that opposites attract. So you're exactly right there as well. A lot of times people do marry the opposite in the politics, and no doubt they kind of probably like the challenge that their partner brings to the table. They like the debates. They like the differing viewpoints. It makes things interesting. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's true that opposites attract, and that could be really sexy and appealing until it's not. And it can be one of the things that leads to a breakup.
Well, what does it look like when you go through the divorce process? Is this a more amicable breakup? Or, it almost seems weird. You got to go to the judge. It's like, hey, I want to divorce this guy because he won't vote the way I want to. Is that like an irreconcilable differences? Or how does that work out legally?
That would definitely be. I mean, we don't have a change in political parties or of voting difference as a grounds for divorce. So yes, we would put that, assuming there aren't any other factors at play, we would put that in the category of insupportable differences, irreconcilable differences.
Well, do you see people regret that? Do you see people like, I was just caught up in the heat of the moment over politics, and it turns out, my soulmate and keeping my nuclear family together is a little more important than the electoral success of my team?
I think by the time they come into my office, it's a lot more than just a political vote change. There are a lot of other issues that have divided them for a long period of time. So, yeah, I mean, I think just because somebody's going to vote a different party, that's not necessarily going to be why you say goodbye. But if they're snoring loudly and they change political parties,
there you go.
That might be the reason, yeah.
Yeah, that makes a little bit more sense. If you were in the orbit of Cheryl Hines and RFK, is there any advice you would give them?
I mean, I think the first thing is to choose a divorce process that allows you to protect the privacy of your family, so everybody across the country isn't discussing your marital affairs. And so I'm a big proponent of collaborative divorce as a way for people to take control of the process and really keep it private. I think people fight over all kinds of things, especially in the divorce process. And those fights take an incredible toll on people. So I just usually advise that people choose their battles carefully. Yeah,
and in the details I read online at Yahoo News, there was also an alleged affair by RFK, but Cheryl Hines wasn't upset about that. She was more upset with her husband's involvement in the whole Trump campaign now.
I mean, who knows what the real story is, right? Only they really know. But, usually the things that people come into the divorce process with are symptoms of a bigger problem in the relationship. So, we're going to complain about money being the issue, but really it's the fact that we can't communicate, we can't agree on anything, we don't have any shared values, and we're spending all of our time, apart doing different things.
Well, look, you're a divorce lawyer. You've probably seen this 1,000 times. My mind is blown that Cheryl Hines is basically saying, look, I don't care if he's sleeping around and humping half of our neighbors. As long as he's not voting for Republicans, I'm okay with that.
Right. Yeah. No, that's usually not the scenario I'm dealing with. Usually she does care that he's sleeping around. And that is usually the reason. Changing political parties isn't. But.
Right. Well, if my wife was that cool with that sort of behavior, I might just have to switch my vote too. Jennifer Hargraves, where do they find you outside of WBAP?
HargraveFamilyLaw.com is a great place to start.
Yeah, and if you're in a bad situation, Hargrave Family Law. Thank you very much, Jennifer. Good stuff.
Thank you. Bye.
All right, coming up next, I am so proud of the guys that work down the hall from me. Right here in Dallas, the company that owns WBAP and a few other stations, Cumulus, we just had a huge win at what's called the Marconi Awards. It's like the Oscars or the Emmys or the Grammys, but for radio. And I'm going to tell you about the two big winners right here in our building coming up next on The James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Hey there, welcome to The James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. You know, one of the reasons I got so into talk radio before I started working in talk radio, it's just sort of a happenstance of my background. And you probably would have been more likely to choose this career path. If you go back with me, when I say I'm from Bug Tussle, it's because I'm really from nowhere. I'm just from 30-acre pasture with a bunch of coastal hay on it out in East Texas. And it's somewhere kind of between like Tyler and Chapel Hill and Overton and Arp, if you know these places. So I was so remote, they didn't run cable out there. And so if you have an air antenna, you could get 3 stations, maybe 4. If the Dallas PBS station is having a good day, if that mouse is running really hard in the wheel. So my connection to the outside world, more so than all my friends, except for the other hicks that had no cable, was the radio. So I'd always been partial to the radio to begin with. But then in the year 2000, I had some car trouble and my grandmother was being nice. She's like, why don't you have a spare car? I don't ever drive it. And she didn't. She had gotten this car off the lot in 1973. It was a Mercury Comet, which is the same as a Ford Maverick, just a Mercury version. And then she had a Crown Vic that she had been driving for the last couple of decades, and she hadn't touched this car. So I got a 73 Comet. All it had in it was an AM radio. No FM, no tape deck, definitely not a CD player, not even an 8-track. So I listened to AM radio at 22 years old. That was all I listened to, AM radio. Now, my friends had listened to The Ticket, and that was really the only only reason I ever went to AM radio was to listen to The Ticket. But then I started, when you're stuck on the AM side, I listened to Cliff and WBAP too. And so here I am. I work on WBAP, and down the hall is KLIF and The Ticket. So my fandom for The Ticket goes back 25 or so years. I remember I first started listening in like 1997 when I came here for a summer job while I was at ETBU. And then when I moved here for good in 1999, huge fan. So many of the things I say, some of the vernacular that I use on this show comes from A Ticket. When I say something's a whipping, what do you think I'm talking about? When I say something is wheels off, where did that come from? Something's a beating. Say that a lot. P1. I learned the term P1 before I worked in radio because I listened to The Ticket. You're going to hear me when I do Man on the Street interviews. It's going to be me doing my impression of Corby Davidson. He doesn't do it as much now, but I remember when I started listening, he was out there all the time and he used to interview people and he got bored doing it. So he invented like the repeater, the corrector, and he would do all these personalities and these tricks that no one else was doing. I loved it. And so it was so good to see The Ticket because I think it was what started in 94 and I didn't catch on until 97. And then you fast forward about 10 years and it wins Sports Station of the Year. And you're like, oh, man, that's so great to see guys who are not only good at their craft, constantly improving at their craft. They do such a good job. Like, this is a sports station. This is the first place I turned it when 9/11 happened. I turned it on The Ticket, and I turned it on Rush Limbaugh on WBAP. And so to see them actually get recognition, and then they got Sports Station of the Year again. They got it, I think they've gotten it like 4 times. Like 2007 and 2013 and then again in 2017. And I think the last time they got it was like 2021. It seems to be they're just in like a 5-year cycle or something. Well, this week, yesterday, they had the Marconi Awards for this year, which is our Grammys, our Emmys, our Oscars. And they didn't win Sports Station of the Year. They won Station of the Year. Down the hall from me with guys that I've been fans of for decades. I've been watching them. I watched them when they were babies, when they were still in their radio diapers, trying to figure it out. We didn't have sports radio in Dallas. And they put their flag down, they established the homestead, and then they made it happen. First job I had was on a radio station that was specifically designed to take down the ticket. We never did when I was there. And then after Howard Stern and everyone left, they flipped to sports because we weren't getting enough of the audience. Still couldn't take them down. Another sports station comes in the market, so now there's 3. And all they're trying to do is take down the ticket. All they're trying to do really is be the ticket. And the ticket for 2 decades has swatted them off like flies. Now, they've gone through some changes. They've lost some personalities that you thought were legendary, could never be replaced. And then here they are, higher than they were before those guys left. And I watched them go all the way to the top with no one really helping them. All the other stations are trying to take them down, finally get recognized. And it's rare for a sports station to be the station of the year. So I'm super proud of them, and I'm super proud of Rachel Ryan for winning Personality of the Year. Those were our 2 big trophies that we got here at Cumulus Dallas at the Marconi Awards. Oh, James, how many awards did the James Show win? Nothing. I wasn't even invited. I had to sit here and do a show. But round of applause. I'm a big fan of the ticket, and I'm super excited that they got Station of the Year. All right, you people who are trying to win a ticket to Vegas, a trip to Vegas to see Scorpions at Planet Hollywood, I promised you a keyword before the end of the show, which means I kind of have to do it now. Your keyword is music. That's an easy one, M-U-S-I-C. Text music to 95819, 95819 for another entry to win a trip to Las Vegas to see Scorpions at Planet Hollywood. Compliments of the very generous people over at Live Nation. For contest rules, go to WBAP.com. If you want to hear more of the James Show, you're going to have to rely on the podcast. It lives on at WBAP.com and the WBAP app. And you know what? Find me when you're goofing around on social media, whether you're on YouTube or Facebook or Instagram. Look up James Parker. Look up the James Show. Give me some follows, subscribe, shares, whatever. Help a brother out. I'm James Parker. This has been the James Show, News Talk 820 WBAP, and now on FM at 93.3.